Welcome to the Cheating Confession Reddit channel. Today, I'm going to share with you a real-life cheating story. It will give you a better understanding of the issue of infidelity today and help you be more cautious when it comes to a cheating wife. Let's dive into this story together.
My name is Luke Abraham. As I steered into the parking lot of my workplace, I carefully maneuvered into my designated spot and turned off the engine. Stepping out, my gaze was drawn to the vibrant neon glow above the main entrance. Abrams Manufacturing. Pride swelled within me as I admired the name, my name, illuminated on the headquarters of a flourishing business. The security guard greeted me with a familiar nod, and I made my way to my corner office on the top floor. It has been 10 years since I revolutionized the HVAC industry with a cutting-edge efficiency monitoring system. That invention secured an overwhelming 80% of the market and catapulted my company into the limelight. Over time, our product line expanded, featuring an array of patented systems for control and measurement. 5 years ago, I introduced a profit-sharing initiative to retain and motivate elite talent. The plan exceeded expectations. Employees enjoyed generous benefits, including a 100% match on 401k contributions up to 6%, a year-end profit-sharing bonus of 15%, and an additional 10% post-tax bonus during exceptional years. Recently, our CFO informed me that the company's valuation had risen to $20 million. Offers from venture capitalists and corporations to purchase the business poured in regularly, but I declined them all. The satisfaction of growing something significant alongside an exceptional team outweighed any monetary temptation. Life felt complete. My professional success was mirrored by a fulfilling personal life. Becky, my wife of 14 years, has been a steadfast partner throughout my journey. While the early years were marked by challenges as I established the company, we now enjoyed a stable and comfortable lifestyle. Becky, who works part-time as a marketing consultant, often operates from home. Her striking presence, a statuesque 5'8" inches frame, fiery red hair, and a magnetic personality, never ceased to captivate me. While our intimacy had always been fulfilling, I had noticed a subtle decline in recent months, shifting from several times a week to a mere once weekly. Becky's demeanor had changed too. She seemed perpetually engrossed in her phone, texting frequently, and had even password protected it, a first for us. We'd always been transparent with each other. When I raised these concerns, the dwindling closeness, her new secrecy, and the shift in her mood, she brushed them aside. She attributed it to aging and general fatigue, but reassured me of her love, urging me not to worry. The topic of starting a family had also surfaced. I deeply longed for children, and 5 months ago Becky reluctantly agreed to discontinue birth control within 6 months. While her enthusiasm didn't match mine, I hoped time would shift her perspective. As I mulled over these thoughts in my office, Chad Warwick, my vice president of sales and a longtime friend from college, dropped by. Chad and I had been teammates on our high school soccer and hockey teams, forging a bond that endured through the years. Now, as his boss, our friendship had evolved into a professional partnership. "Luke, I'm not feeling great today," Chad said, his voice tinged with fatigue. "Might be the flu. I'll head home, rest up, and hopefully be back tomorrow. I've already sent off the proposal for the convention center's HVAC controls, so everything's squared away for now." "Take care of yourself," I replied, watching as he left. Afterward, I embarked on my usual walkthrough of the company. I visited sales and marketing, human resources, and the manufacturing floor, engaging with employees and gathering insights. This routine, which took about an hour, always left me energized. Returning to my office, I planned to focus on a potential new business line. However, I realized the latest iteration of my project file was saved on my home computer. Rather than making the trip, I decided to call Becky and ask her to email it to me. To my surprise, the house phone went to voicemail, and Becky's cell was turned off. This struck me as unusual, given her habit of keeping her phone accessible during work hours. Left with no choice, I decided to drive home. The pleasant weather made the 20-minute drive somewhat enjoyable, but as I turned onto our street, my heart skipped a beat. Parked in the driveway was a car I immediately recognized, Chad's Lexus. A wave of unease swept over me. I parked discreetly on the street and approached the house quietly. Unlocking the door, I stepped inside to an eerily silent first floor. Becky's study was empty. Then, faint voices and muffled sounds from upstairs caught my attention. A sinking feeling gripped my stomach. My heart pounded as I grabbed a carving knife from the kitchen and ascended the stairs. Pausing outside the master bedroom, I strained to listen. Becky's voice, unmistakable, filtered through the door. "Chad, we can't keep this up much longer. Luke's starting to suspect something. The phone, the intimacy. I feel so guilty being with you and then going back to him. But these past few months have been exhilarating. My last fling before we start a family. Let's make this count. After Denver, it's over." Her words struck me like a blow. Their upcoming trips, her marketing conference and his sales pitch in Denver, suddenly aligned in my mind. My pulse raced as I peeked into the room, capturing the scene. Becky and Chad together in our bed. Hands trembling, I pulled out my phone and started recording. With deliberate steps, I entered the room. Becky's expression turned to horror as I yanked her off Chad by her hair and threw her onto the bed. Both were paralyzed with shock, their faces drained of color. "Luke, it's not what it looks like," Becky cried, desperation lacing her voice. Chad stuttered, "Boss, this is just meaningless. It's nothing serious." "Meaningless?" I roared, the fury in my voice filling the room. "You've reduced our marriage to this? You dare to call it meaningless while betraying me in our bed?" Turning to Chad, I growled, "Don't move." I dialed Jamie, Chad's wife. When she answered, I said, "Jamie, I'm sending you a video of Chad in bed with my wife. I hate to be the bearer of this, but you deserve to know." Hanging up, I glared at Chad. "Jamie says not to bother coming home." The silence that followed was suffocating. In that moment, the perfect life I thought I had lay in ruins. It was evident that this wasn't the first time you had abandoned the commitments that defined your life, to your children, to your own values. Now you'd added another to the list, deceiving a friend, undermining your boss, and shattering the foundation of 2 marriages. The enormity of this betrayal left little room for forgiveness. Yet I resolved to offer you a single chance to salvage what remained of your dignity. "Tell me," I demanded, my voice cold, "when did this begin? And how many times has it happened?" Becky's tear-streaked face turned to me, her voice trembling. "Please, Luke," she begged. "Don't make us go over this again. It's over. It was meaningless. It stops here. Don't let this destroy everything we have." Her sobs filled the room, and Chad, his voice unsteady, stepped forward. "Luke, don't let this end our friendship or cost me my career." Becky and I were reckless, caught up in physical attraction. But it wasn't about love. She means nothing to me, and I mean nothing to her. It was foolishness, plain and simple. This only happened 4 times. Chad hesitated, swallowing hard before continuing. "The first time was in Denver. We were there for separate conferences, but I knew she'd be attending. She mentioned it at the company barbecue. I got her number and asked her to dinner. One drink turned into several, sparks flew, and we ended up spending both nights together in my hotel room. A month later, Becky called me while you were out of town visiting a construction site. She invited me over, and it happened again, in your house." His gaze flickered to Becky, who was trembling violently. 3 weeks after that, we rented a room at the Hilton under the pretense of a lunch meeting. And today, she asked me to pretend I was sick and come over. We had already decided that the next Denver conference would be our final time together. We planned to spend 3 nights there, then put it behind us and focus on our marriages. We knew it was wrong, Luke. We've both felt the guilt. Becky even told me she'd stop taking birth control to start the family you've been wanting. This was supposed to be the end. I'm truly sorry. Becky's voice, barely more than a whisper, cut through the tension. Luke, I've been lost in the thrill of keeping secrets. It wasn't about you. I've always loved you, only you. I want a family, a future with you. What I had with Chad doesn't compare to what we have. Please don't let one mistake destroy us. Her words only fanned the flames of my anger. A mistake? That's what you call this? I snapped. Do you have any idea who I am? Did you think letting another man touch you would mean nothing? Do you believe I can simply overlook the lies and betrayal and trust you again? How could I feel the same love or connection after this? The distance, the coldness, the hollow intimacy. It all makes sense now. You've been absent for months. My voice rose, sharp and unrelenting. A mistake is a single drunken night, not orchestrated meetings in hotels in our own bed. What's wrong with you? Becky's face shifted as if she was seeing the depth of her actions for the first time. The illusion she had clung to, that this was harmless, that she could return to being the perfect wife, crumbled under my words. Tears streamed down her face as she murmured, "I lied to myself. I thought you'd forgive me, that we'd move past this. I convinced myself it would somehow make me a better wife. But now I see the damage I've done to the man I love. How can I fix this? How can I make it right?" I couldn't even look at her. Instead, I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Her gasps, her moans, the shameless declarations of pleasure with Chad. Her face crumpled as I said, "How could you think you weren't disrespecting me when you said those things in our bed? You've destroyed me." Turning to Chad, I fixed him with a cold stare. "I lied. You're not keeping your job. Don't bother coming back tomorrow. You're fired. Leave my house." Chad scrambled to gather his things and left in a hurry. Becky moved as if to follow, but I stopped her with a sharp bark. "Stay where you are. You don't deserve to move." She froze, her face contorted in anguish as the weight of her actions bore down on her. I grabbed my belongings, stormed out of the house, and drove away without looking back. After I left, Becky collapsed onto the floor, racked with uncontrollable sobs. Desperation gnawed at her as she resolved to give me space, clinging to the hope that I'd come back calmer and willing to talk. She washed her tear-streaked face and prepared herself for the inevitable confrontation. But the house was unnervingly silent. "Luke!" she called out, her voice breaking. "I'll stay in the spare room. I'll give you time until you're ready to talk." The silence was deafening. Returning to the master bedroom, her eyes fell on the open, empty drawers and the missing suitcases. Her breath caught as she saw the knife embedded in her pillow. Dread washed over her as she realized I was gone. She retreated to the spare room, curling into a ball as fresh sobs overtook her. Meanwhile, I spent the night on the couch in my office, restless and consumed by anguish. By morning, Chad, deluded into thinking I'd cooled off, showed up at work. Security escorted him out, his access revoked. I notified HR and sat alone in my office, staring into the void of what my future might hold. Deep down, I knew the truth. The marriage was beyond repair. No matter how much I loved Becky, the trust was shattered, the connections severed. Without those, there was no foundation to rebuild. Call it pride, call it anger, call it betrayal. The result was the same. What we had was gone, and there was no bringing it back. Labels no longer held any significance for Luke. The deep disrespect he had endured made it painfully clear that Becky could never feel the love or connection he needed in a life partner. The idea of continuing their plans for children and a family felt meaningless now. It was over. Resolute, Luke called in his CFO, and together they spent 4 intense hours meticulously analyzing the company's valuation and mapping out Luke's future steps. When Luke revealed the betrayal involving Chad and his wife Becky, his trusted financial advisor was stunned. He urged Luke to avoid making any rash decisions, suggesting he take time to let his emotions settle. But Luke's determination was unwavering. Meanwhile, Becky woke up that morning, and as the haze of sleep lifted, the full weight of what she'd done hit her with crushing clarity. "What have I done?" she asked herself. Her fleeting, meaningless encounter with someone she barely cared about had jeopardized her marriage to the only man she had ever truly loved. "What is wrong with me?" she thought, resolving to fix things and rebuild their relationship. She was certain that Luke's love for her was strong enough to overcome this. Though she had promised to give him space, she couldn't resist calling him. The call went straight to voicemail. Her message was heartfelt and desperate. "Luke, I'm so sorry. I love you more than anything, and I'm ashamed of what I've done. But we can get through this together. Please, just talk to me. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Yet Luke didn't respond. not that day or the next. On the third day, Becky called his office and managed to reach Brenda, his executive assistant. Brenda, who had always admired Luke and now knew the full story of his heartbreak, took the call. Her tone was curt as she informed Becky that Luke was unavailable and had specifically instructed her not to forward personal calls. Becky assumed he simply needed more time, though Brenda's words hinted at something more final. The news came soon enough through Chad. Luke had fired him. Chad's wife had also thrown him out, forcing him to move back in with his parents. He suggested meeting with Becky to coordinate an appeal for Luke's forgiveness, but she dismissed him furiously, blaming him for everything. Deep down, she knew the fault wasn't his alone. As Becky reflected, she grappled with the enormity of what she had risked for something so trivial. After a week of silence from Luke, her patience snapped. She tried calling him again, only to discover his number was disconnected. Desperation set in, and she called his office once more, but the response remained unchanged. Luke was unavailable, and she was asked to stop contacting him. The rejection pushed her to take more drastic measures. Becky reached out to mutual friends, hoping someone might reveal where Luke was or what he was thinking. But each call ended the same way, with silence or cold detachment. It was clear that Luke had confided in them about the affair, and their reactions amplified her shame and despair. As a final attempt, Becky called Luke's parents. They hung up as soon as they recognized her voice. When she tried again, her call went unanswered. Determined, she drove to Luke's manufacturing company, persuading security to let her into the lobby. Brenda came down to meet her, unimpressed. Through tears, Becky pleaded to see her husband, insisting he at least owed her a conversation. Brenda's response was icy. Respect? The same respect you showed him in your marriage? Luke doesn't work here anymore. He sold the company, left town, and instructed us not to share his whereabouts. Please leave, or I'll have security escort you out. Staggered, Becky returned home, struggling to reconcile Luke's actions with the man she thought she knew. Sold the company? Left town? She tried writing him a heartfelt email, but both his personal and work accounts were deactivated. Attempts to contact his parents also failed. They had blocked her number. Exhausted and defeated, she retreated to the spare bedroom, where she collapsed, overcome by grief. Weeks turned into a fog of isolation and sorrow. Desperate for closure, Becky hired a private investigator. The report confirmed her worst fears. Luke sold the company for $20 million, closed their joint accounts, canceled their credit cards, and liquidated his possessions. He had paid off the mortgage and transferred the house to her name. Friends, colleagues, and family all refused to disclose his location. 8 weeks after Luke's departure, a courier arrived at Becky's door with a manila envelope. Her heart raced as she recognized Luke's handwriting. Inside was his wedding ring, along with documents and a photograph shredded into strips. As she painstakingly pieced the photo back together, it became clear it was their wedding portrait. Overcome, she broke down in uncontrollable sobs before summoning the courage to examine the remaining contents. Among the papers was a letter from Luke. The words were unyielding. Becky, you believed we could move past your affair, that it was just a mistake. For me, it was much more. It shattered my trust and proved you could never have loved me as deeply as I loved you. No one has ever hurt me so profoundly, and knowing it was you, the woman I cherished above all others, makes it unforgivable. I could never trust you again, or share intimacy without recalling your betrayal. Perhaps you've minimized what happened or convinced yourself it wasn't that significant. Enclosed is a video of you and Chad, a permanent reminder of the damage done. Your words and actions haunt me still. Friends and family have told me you've avoided taking full accountability, and that only confirms my decision. Goodbye. Clutching the letter, Becky felt her heart sink under the weight of Luke's finality. She realized that whatever hope she had nurtured was gone. All that remained was the hollow reality of her choices. It is with profound sorrow that I must tell you that the same video, though with an altered message, has now reached those who need to understand the full weight of your betrayal. Its purpose is clear: to ensure they grasp that reconciliation is no longer possible. You have wounded me so deeply, left me so utterly broken, that I felt compelled to seek vengeance. I take no pride in what I have done, but I saw no other course of action. From this moment forward, I am choosing to remove myself from your life entirely. You will neither see me nor hear from me again. I will not return to our home, our town, or perhaps even to our state. I doubt I will ever fully understand why you chose this path. Was I not enough for you, or was there a void within yourself that drove you to these actions? For your own sake, I hope you uncover the truth before committing to someone else. I hope the memory of the pain you caused me lingers, ensuring you never inflict such harm on anyone again. Perhaps one day, I will find a way to move past the searing pain, the humiliation, and the utter disrespect you showed me. Perhaps I will remember the early days of our relationship, the times when love truly existed between us. And perhaps, with time, the hatred consuming me will dissolve into nothingness. If I ever become the man I aspire to be, perhaps forgiveness or understanding will find a place in my heart. But you will not be there to witness that transformation. Maybe you no longer care. Maybe you never did. I may never know, and that uncertainty is yet another burden I will carry with me. This is goodbye. The final documents in the envelope bore the stark title, Divorce Dissolution. By the time Becky read those words, her tears had blurred the page, and she collapsed onto the floor in despair. 5 years have passed since Luke disappeared from Becky's life. True to his word, there has been no contact, no phone calls, no letters, no sightings. No one had any news about where he was or how he was faring. During the divorce proceedings, Luke demonstrated remarkable generosity. He provided Becky with $1 million, along with their house and all their joint property, rather than arranging for long-term financial support. The lawyer advised her to accept the offer, explaining that Luke's $22 million fortune from the sale of his company was safely tucked away overseas, out of reach of any legal claims. Becky accepted the settlement without argument. Deep down, she felt she deserved nothing and had no intention of disputing what Luke believed was fair. The aftermath of their separation was excruciating. The video, a damning testament to her infidelity, recorded in their marital bed, was seen by her friends and family. The humiliation was immense, yet Becky understood that the pain she had caused Luke far outweighed her own suffering. Sharing the video was his way of ensuring that no one would ever question whether reconciliation was possible. She bore the heavy weight of her shame. At her parents' urging, Becky began therapy to confront her overwhelming grief and depression. She worked to rebuild her life, but the shadow of despair hung over her, infiltrating every aspect of her existence. Attempts at dating yielded little. Her lingering thoughts and unresolved pain created an impenetrable barrier, rendering every encounter strained and unnatural. She sought fleeting solace in casual relationships, but they left her feeling degraded and empty, a stark reminder of what she had lost. Eventually, she abandoned those endeavors altogether. When Luke left, he took their wedding photo album, leaving Becky with only a handful of photographs from their life together. Over time, her memories of him began to blur. His face, his voice, the essence of his being, all of it started to fade. Each passing day seemed to take more of him away, leaving only faint echoes of the life they once shared. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.